The restaurant was packed with laughter and the smell of roasted meat. But at our family table, silence burned hotter than the food. When I tried to sit beside my mother, she moved her purse and said coldly, "Go find another table, Sephew. This one's for real family." Everyone stared. My plate shook in my hands as whispers spread. My brother Obi chuckled. "You heard Mom. You're adopted, remember?" I stood frozen, the room spinning. My father didn't even look up from his meal. But then, a voice came from behind, calm, strong, and sharp enough to silence the table. It was my grandfather. He said something that made my mother's face turn pale. "If only you knew who that boy really is." And just like that, the truth that had been buried for decades began to crawl into the light. The restaurant was full of happy voices and clinking plates. But at Sephew's family table, everything felt cold. He had dressed in his best shirt, hoping his parents would finally see him the same way they saw his brother, Obi. Tonight was Obi's graduation dinner. And everyone was in a good mood. Everyone except Sephew. He smiled shyly, trying to join their laughter, but every time he spoke his mother's eyes rolled, and his father ignored him. When the waiter brought 4 glasses instead of 5, Sephew waited, expecting his mother to ask for one more. But she didn't. She simply picked up her drink and continued talking to Obi about his new job. The empty space in front of Sephew felt louder than the music playing in the background. He looked down at his hands, pretending not to notice. Trying to feel included, Sephew quietly said, "I'm proud of you, Obi." But Obi laughed, clinking glasses with his parents. "You should be. Not everyone gets to graduate top of the class," he said proudly. His mother nodded, smiling at him with pride, as if Sephew didn't even exist. Still, Sephew stayed calm. He told himself it was just another family dinner. But when he tried to sit beside his mother, she moved her purse, looked at him coldly and said, "Go find another table, Sephew. This one's for real family." The whole restaurant went silent. A few people turned their heads. Sephew froze, his hands shaking as he held his plate. He thought he misheard her, but his brother's cruel laugh confirmed it. "You heard Mom," Obi said, smirking. "You're adopted, remember?" The words hit Sephew like a slap. Adopted. The room blurred, and his chest tightened. He searched for his father's face, hoping for help, but the man didn't even look up. He just kept eating. The air felt heavy. Sephew could hear whispers around the table, the sound of quiet laughter. His throat burned as he fought back tears. He wanted to ask why they hated him so much. He wanted to understand what he had done wrong. But all he could do was stand there, feeling smaller with every passing second. And just when he thought he couldn't take it anymore, a strong, deep voice came from behind him. It was his grandfather, Baba Ade. The old man's eyes were filled with fire as he said, "If only you knew who that boy really is." The table fell silent. His mother's face turned pale. And in that moment, Sephew knew, something big, something long buried, was about to be revealed. Sephew stood frozen, his plate still trembling in his hands. His mother's words echoed in his ears, and his brother's cruel laugh still rang in his head. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Then suddenly, a sharp sound broke through the silence. Baba Ade's cane hitting the floor. Everyone turned. The old man's eyes were fierce, his voice filled with anger and power as he said, "Enough! If you knew who Sephew really is, you'd be the ones begging for a seat at his table." The words hung in the air like thunder. No one moved. Even the waiter stopped in his tracks. Sephew's father's face turned pale, the color draining completely. His mother tried to keep her calm, but her eyes flashed with panic as she stared at Baba Ade, silently begging him not to say more. Obi's smirk faded. For the first time, he looked confused. Sephew stared at his grandfather, unsure what was happening. His heart raced. What does he mean? He thought. Who am I really? His mother tried to laugh it off. "Baba, please not here," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "You don't know what you're talking about." But Baba Ade didn't stop. He leaned on his cane and said slowly, "You've hidden the truth long enough. This boy deserves to know who he is." Sephew's mother shot him a warning look, but the old man ignored her. His voice grew stronger with every word. "You think he's beneath you, but one day, the world will know the truth about that child you've tried to shame." The tension around the table grew thicker. Obi looked at his mother. "Mom, what's he talking about?" he asked, confused. But she didn't answer. She only glared at Baba Ade, her lips pressed tight. Sefiu's father finally spoke, his tone sharp and angry. "Father, this isn't the time or place. You're upsetting everyone." But Baba Ade's reply came calm and steady. "No, Namdi. You upset me when you took in this boy and treated him like he was nothing. You forgot who gave you everything you own today." Everyone went silent again. Sefiu could feel people staring from other tables. He looked from his parents to his grandfather, his heart pounding. He didn't understand what any of it meant, but one thing was clear. The old man's words had shaken the table in a way nothing else ever had. And deep inside, Sefiu knew his life would never be the same again. The ride home was painfully quiet. No one spoke a word. Sefiu sat in the back seat, staring at the city lights flashing past the window, his mind full of questions that no one wanted to answer. His mother kept her eyes fixed on the road, her lips pressed tightly together. His father sat beside her, silent and tense. Even Obi didn't dare to say anything. The air inside the car felt heavy, almost suffocating. When they got home, Sefiu tried to speak. "Grandpa, what did he mean? Who am I really?" But his father snapped, "Don't listen to that old man. He's confused." His mother quickly added, "Go to your room, Sefiu. We'll talk in the morning." But Sefiu could tell from her shaky voice that she didn't plan to tell him anything. He went to his room but couldn't sleep. His heart pounded as he replayed his grandfather's words over and over again. "If you knew who Sefiu really is." The sentence refused to leave his mind. Around midnight, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Baba Ade. "Come to my house. Alone." Without hesitation, Sefiu threw on a jacket and walked through the quiet streets until he reached his grandfather's old wooden house at the edge of the neighborhood. The door creaked open before he could even knock. Baba Ade was sitting by a small oil lamp, his face tired but serious. "Sit down, my boy," he said softly. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for a small, brown envelope on the table. "It's time you knew the truth." Sefiu took the envelope, confused and nervous. When he opened it, his breath caught in his throat. Inside were official adoption papers, with his baby picture attached. His full name was written clearly, but the space where his birth parents' names should be had been completely blacked out. "Grandpa, what is this?" he asked in shock. "You were brought here for protection," Baba Ade whispered. "Protection? From what?" Sefiu's voice shook. The old man sighed deeply. "There are people in this world who would have hurt you if they knew who you really were. Your mother and father loved you too much to let that happen. So they gave you a new name, and I gave you a new life." Sefiu's mind spun. Everything he had believed about himself was falling apart. He wasn't just adopted, he was hidden. Tears filled his eyes as he looked at the papers again. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because you weren't ready," Baba Ade said quietly. "But the time has come. The truth can't stay buried forever." Sefiu stared at him, his heart heavy. He didn't know what kind of danger or past he had been saved from, but one thing was clear. His life had just changed forever. Sefiu sat in silence, staring at his grandfather. The small lamp on the table flickered, casting shadows across Baba Ade's tired face. The old man looked at him with heavy eyes and said softly, "There's something you must know about where you come from." His voice shook as if every word carried years of pain. Sefiu leaned forward, his heart beating fast, waiting for answers he wasn't sure he wanted to hear. "Your father," Baba Ade began, "was not an ordinary man. He was Governor Nuruo Konjo, a man loved by many and feared by those in power. He fought for justice, for the poor, for this country. But his courage made enemies." He paused, his hands trembling as he poured a small cup of tea. "One night, when you were just a baby, they came for him. He was assassinated." Sefiu's mouth went dry. "My father was killed." Baba Ade nodded slowly. "Your mother was there. She held you in her arms as chaos filled the house. She knew they wouldn't stop with him. They'd come for you next. She had to make an impossible choice. She gave you to me, her old friend, and begged me to protect you. She wanted you to live, even if it meant losing you." Sefiu's eyes filled with tears. "So she's alive?" Baba Ade looked down. "I don't know anymore, my boy. She disappeared after that night. I heard rumors that she fled the country, but nothing certain." Sefiu sat frozen, his heart twisting with confusion and pain. All his life, he had believed he was unwanted, just an adopted child his family tolerated. Now he was hearing that he was the son of a powerful man, hidden to keep him safe. Baba Ade continued, his voice low but firm. When your parents agreed to take you, it was supposed to be out of kindness. But they saw an opportunity. They were promised wealth, comfort, and power from what remained of your father's estate. It was a deal, not love. They never raised you as their own, only as a reminder of what they gained. The words hit Sefu harder than anything before. Every cold look, every cruel word, every moment he had begged for affection, it all made sense now. His entire life had been built on lies and greed. Tears rolled down his face as he whispered, "So I was never really their son. I was their secret." Baba Ade placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "You were more than that, Sefu. You were your father's legacy, the truth they tried to bury. But no secret stays hidden forever." Sefu looked at the papers again, feeling his chest tighten. The truth had finally come out, and nothing would ever be the same again. The sun had barely risen when Sefu walked into the living room. His eyes were red from a sleepless night, and his hands trembled slightly as he faced his parents. They were sitting at the dining table, pretending to read the morning newspaper, but he could tell they were nervous. The silence between them was thick. Finally, Sefu spoke, his voice calm but filled with hurt. "I know everything," he said. "About who I am. About what you hid from me." His mother's head snapped up, her face turning pale. "Sefu, what are you talking about?" she asked, forcing a shaky smile. His father looked up from the paper, his jaw tight. "Don't start with nonsense this early," he muttered. Sefu stepped closer. "You lied to me my whole life," he said quietly. "You told me I was adopted, but you never said why. You never told me that my real father was Governor Nuruo Konjo." The name made his mother drop her cup, spilling tea across the table. His father stood up immediately, his voice rising. "That old man has lost his mind. Don't listen to his foolish stories." But Sefu didn't move. "He showed me the papers," he said. "He told me everything." His mother shook her head rapidly, tears filling her eyes. "No, no, Sefu, you don't understand." Before she could finish, the front door opened, and Baba Ade stepped in. He looked tired but strong, holding something in his hand, an old, faded photograph. Everyone turned to look at him. "I didn't want it to come to this," he said quietly. He handed the photograph to Sefu. "Show them." Sefu looked down at the photo and then held it up for his parents to see. It was a picture of a smiling young woman holding a baby, the same baby from his adoption papers. Beside her stood a tall man in a suit, his hand resting proudly on her shoulder. Sefu had seen that face before. It was the same man whose portrait hung in the National Museum, the late Governor Nuruo Konjo. His father's face drained of color. His mother covered her mouth, shaking her head in panic. Baba Ade's voice was steady. "Tell him the truth. You both know this photo doesn't lie." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then his father sank into a chair, defeated. "We didn't mean for it to go this far," he said in a broken voice. Sefu felt his chest tighten. The truth was right there in front of him. Undeniable and heavy. He wasn't just an adopted boy. He was the son of a powerful man whose blood still carried weight in the country. And the people he had called parents had kept it hidden out of greed and fear. As tears filled his eyes, Sefu finally whispered, "So all this time, you were afraid of me?" And the silence that followed was all the answer he needed. Sefu couldn't stop thinking about the photograph. The man in it looked exactly like him. The same eyes, the same calm smile. He needed proof, something solid that no one could deny. So the next day, he went to the National Museum, the place where his supposed father's portrait hung proudly among the country's greatest leaders. His heart pounded as he walked through the grand hall, surrounded by pictures of men who had shaped history. And then there it was, the portrait of Governor Nuruo Konjo. Sefu stood still, staring at it. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. The same sharp jawline, the same eyes that seemed to look right through you. He whispered softly, "That's him, that's my father." A museum curator, an elderly man with kind eyes, noticed him standing there for so long. He walked over and smiled. "You look familiar," he said, studying Sefu's face. "You look just like him. Governor Nuru's son disappeared after the attack. Are you?" Sefu didn't know what to say. The curator's eyes widened as he realized the truth. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire. Photos of Sephu standing beside the governor's portrait began appearing online with the headline, "The missing heir has been found." Social media exploded with comments and videos comparing his face to old pictures of the late governor. Reporters gathered outside his house, cameras flashing, trying to get a statement. Neighbors whispered and pointed whenever he passed by. But not everyone was happy. Inside the house, chaos took over. His adoptive parents locked the doors and refused to answer questions. They were terrified. The world now knew the truth they had spent years hiding. Their faces appeared in the news too, labeled as the couple who raised the missing heir in secret. Obi was furious. He stormed into Sephu's room shouting, "You think you're better than us now? You're stealing my life, my spotlight." His voice cracked with jealousy. "You've always been nothing, and now suddenly you're a prince?" Sephu looked at him quietly. "I never asked for this. I just wanted to know who I am." But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The truth that had freed him also brought danger. Powerful people had killed his real father, and they wouldn't be happy to see his son alive. As the world celebrated the return of the missing heir, Sephu stood by his window, watching the flashing cameras outside. He didn't care about fame or money. All he wanted was justice. But finding truth, he was learning, always came with enemies. At first, Sephu thought it was just his imagination. Maybe the messages were from online trolls who had seen his story on the news. But then the tone changed. One morning, he woke up to find an envelope slipped under his door. Inside was a short note that made his stomach drop. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." No name, no signature, just that one sentence written in neat block letters. He tried to brush it off, but more messages kept coming. His phone buzzed late at night with strange texts. "You don't know who you're messing with." Another one said, "Your father didn't listen either." The words chilled him to the bone. Whoever was sending them knew exactly who he was and what he was looking for. One evening, he went to see Baba Ade, hoping for comfort and advice. The old man was sitting quietly on his porch looking worried. When Sephu showed him the messages, Baba Ade sighed deeply and said, "I was afraid this would happen." "What do you mean?" Sephu asked. Baba Ade looked at him sadly. "Some of the men who killed your father still hold power today. They are in the government, in business, in the military. They have built their lives on lies. If the truth comes out, they will lose everything. They will do anything to stop that from happening." Sephu's heart pounded. "You mean they could come after me?" "Yes," Baba Ade whispered. "That's why your mother hid you. That's why I raised you far away. You were supposed to stay safe and invisible." Sephu sat quietly, staring into the distance. He finally understood the weight of his name. It wasn't just a title. It was a threat to powerful people. The truth could destroy them, but it could also destroy him. Baba Ade placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "You have two choices now, my boy. You can walk away and live a quiet life, or you can fight to clear your father's name. But if you choose to fight, you must be ready for what comes next." Sephu looked at the messages again, his jaw tightening. He remembered the stories of his father, a man who had stood for justice even when it cost him his life. "If my father didn't stay silent," Sephu said quietly, "then neither will I." Baba Ade's eyes filled with pride and worry. The path ahead was dangerous, but Sephu had made his choice. The truth had been buried for too long, and he was ready to dig, no matter the risk. When Baba Ade fell sick, Sephu stayed by his side day and night. The old man had been like a father to him, and seeing him weak broke Sephu's heart. One afternoon, while cleaning the house to make space for a nurse, Sephu noticed a loose wooden plank under the bed. It looked old, like it had been lifted before. Out of curiosity, he pulled it up, and there, hidden beneath the floorboards, was a small iron chest covered in dust. His hands trembled as he dragged it out. The lock was rusty, but after a few hard tries with an old key he found in Baba Ade's drawer, it clicked open. Inside, he found a pile of yellowed letters, a few audio tapes, and several neatly folded documents tied with a faded red ribbon. At first, he thought they were just old family papers, but when he saw his father's name on the first page, his heartbeat quickened. He unfolded one letter and began to read. It was written by his late father, warning someone about a plot against him. The words were desperate, full of fear and urgency. Sephu quickly grabbed another paper. It was a contract signed by several people. When his eyes landed on one signature, he froze. It was the name of his father's closest friend, a man he had heard about all his life, now a powerful government minister. The man who had promised to protect his father had actually betrayed him. Sefiu's hands shook as he dug deeper. There were more letters, conversations between that same minister and other powerful men, planning to frame his father for crimes he never committed. They had taken his business, his property, and his reputation. They had turned him into an enemy of the state so they could rise. Then Sefiu found something that shattered him completely. A legal document bearing the signature of his adoptive father. It stated that Sefiu's adoption was part of an agreement, meant to ensure that the rightful heir to a powerful legacy would disappear quietly. It wasn't fate. It wasn't love. They had adopted him to erase his bloodline, to make sure no one would ever question the lies told about his real father. Tears filled his eyes as he sat on the floor surrounded by the papers. Everything he thought he knew about his past, his family, even his own name, had been a lie carefully planned by the same men who destroyed his father. The betrayal wasn't just political, it was personal. For the first time, Sefiu understood the danger Baba Ade had been warning him about. But now he also understood something else. He held the proof that could destroy them all. With the evidence he found, Sefiu knew he couldn't stay silent anymore. The papers in that old chest were not just memories. They were proof of a crime that had stolen his identity and his father's legacy. But he also knew going public was dangerous. The same powerful men who once killed his father were still in control. So he reached out to someone he could trust, a brave young journalist named Amira, who had been following his story since the first rumors appeared online. Amira listened carefully as Sefiu told her everything. Together, they went through the letters, recordings, and legal papers. She verified every name, every signature, and every date. When she was sure everything was true, she published the story, front page, national news everywhere. The headline read, "The hidden son of Governor Nuru Okonjo, betrayed, erased, and found." The story exploded like fire across the country. News channels played Sefiu's interviews nonstop. People were shocked to learn that the late governor's own allies had conspired against him, and that one of them had raised his son in lies. Cameras surrounded Sefiu's house, and reporters camped outside his parents' gate. His adoptive father tried to deny everything, shouting that it was all fake, but the documents spoke for themselves. His mother, shaking and tearful, called Sefiu privately, begging him to stop. "Sefiu, please," she cried over the phone. "You're tearing this family apart. We raised you. We loved you." He closed his eyes for a long moment before answering, his voice calm but heavy with pain. "You destroyed this family the day you made me sit at another table," he said quietly, remembering the night they rejected him for being adopted. And then he hung up. The truth went to court, and after weeks of testimony and evidence, the judge ruled in Sefiu's favor. His real name, Sefiu Nuru Okonjo, was officially restored. He was declared the rightful heir to his father's estate and legacy. The courtroom erupted in cheers as Amira smiled proudly from the front row. But instead of celebrating with pride or revenge, Sefiu made a choice that surprised everyone. He held a press conference and announced that most of his inheritance would go toward rebuilding the schools and community centers his father once planned for the poor. "This was never about money," he said. "It was about truth. And truth should always help others, not destroy them." The crowd clapped, some with tears in their eyes. That day, Sefiu wasn't just the lost heir who found his name. He became a symbol of justice, forgiveness, and hope for a nation that had forgotten what integrity looked like. Months later, the chaos had quieted. The cameras had left, the noise had faded, and life had finally slowed down. Sefiu sat at a small cafe by the hillside, a soft breeze brushing against his face as he watched the city below. A city that once knew him as nobody, now whispering his name with respect. Across from him sat Baba Ade, frail but recovering, his cane resting beside the table. His eyes still carried the same wisdom that had guided Sefiu through every storm. They shared a peaceful silence until Sefiu spoke, his voice calm and full of gratitude. "You were right, Grandpa," he said, his eyes glistening slightly. "Truth always finds its way home." Baba Ade smiled, his old hands trembling slightly as he reached out and placed one over Sefiu's. "You built your own table, my boy," he said with quiet pride. "And the world came to sit with you." Sefiu looked at the old man, the only one who had ever truly protected him, and smiled back. Everything that once broke him now made sense. The humiliation at the dinner, the rejection, the secrets, the lies, all of it had led him here. Not to revenge, but to peace. He glanced out the cafe window again. The skyline shimmered under the setting sun, golden light spilling over the rooftops. For the first time, he felt free. Not because he had discovered his real name, but because he had finally learned who he was. He was no longer the boy who had been told to sit at another table. He was the man who built one of his own. News of his journey continued to spread online. Videos of his speech and interviews were shared across social media, reaching millions. People wrote messages saying his story gave them courage. Courage to walk away from rejection, to heal from betrayal, and to believe in their own worth again. Hashtags like #BuildYourOwnTable started trending, turning his pain into a message of hope for others. As Baba Ade sipped his tea, he looked up at Sefiu one last time and said softly, "Your father would have been proud." Sefiu nodded, his heart full. "And so am I," he whispered. The camera of life seemed to pull back slowly. A young man sitting beside the elder who saved him, the city glowing beneath them. His journey had begun with rejection, but it ended with purpose. Because sometimes being pushed away isn't punishment, it's direction. You were never meant to sit at their table. You were meant to build your own.